Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Chris Cillizza, political commentator and senior advisor with DGA Group. Chris, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, always happy to do it.
As we sit here right now, we are 3 weeks out to the day from Election Day, and the race is really a dead heat. It's anyone's race to win or to lose. And I would love to speak with you about the media strategies behind each candidate as we are nearing the finish line. So first, let's talk about where they're going and where they aren't going. First, let's talk about Harris and where she's not going. She didn't sit down with Time magazine, and she sat down with podcasts. She's had a tough interview with 60 Minutes, but no interview with Time. And Time owner Mark Benioff took issue with that. This is what he posted. Despite multiple requests, Time has not been granted an interview with Kamala Harris, unlike every other presidential candidate. We believe in transparency and publish each interview in full. Why isn't the vice president engaging with the public on the same level? And he quoted this from a Time story with Harris, or on Harris. Harris declined repeated requests for an interview for this story. In contrast, Trump talked about his policy vision with a Time reporter for 90 minutes across 2 interviews. Biden spoke to Time at similar length before dropping out of the race. What are your thoughts here?
So I think the Harris campaign is being very selective with who they talk to. I think that was especially true in the first couple months of her campaign because they know she has not in the past been great in media interview settings. She struggled a little bit, and I think they wanted to make sure they put her in the most favorable positions possible to succeed. So that's why you saw a lot of podcasts. You saw her do The View. You saw her do Colbert. She's doing a lot of places where it's likely it's going to be a friendly interview. There's no guarantee, but it's likely. Now, I will note that she is going to sit down with Bret Baier on Fox News for her first interview as a politician with Fox News. That will be, I think Bret is a fair guy, but it will absolutely be a at times pointed interview where she will face tough questions. My guess for why they're doing that is I think they realize that they can't keep her on only friendly territory forever, that she has to start winning over some voters who she has not won over yet. To my mind, if you're looking to understand who the undecided voter out there is, there's obviously lots of them, but I would say the sort of bulk of them are Republicans who don't like Trump. So these are people who normally would vote for the Republican nominee, probably voted for a Nikki Haley, for example, in the Republican primary, and are trying to find a way to Trump, but are open to Harris. And I think that's why she does something like Fox News. So I think they're being very strategic and very narrow cast as they make decisions about what she's going to do and what she's not going to do.
Let's talk about that Fox interview a little bit because that surprised a lot of people. Less than 3 weeks out from Election Day, she's sitting down with Fox News for her first time. Do you think she has more to win here or more to lose?
Oh, I always thought she had more to gain. Because honestly, I think she'll get a lot of credit from plenty of people just for doing it. You know what I mean? Just for saying like, yes, I know Fox is broadly speaking conservative and certainly its primetime hosts are very pro-Trump. But I'm going to go in there and, it's the whole going into the lion's den thing. I actually think she'll get a lot of credit simply for agreeing to do the interview. Now, will she face pointed and tough questions? Yes, absolutely. I don't know that there'll be any more pointed or tougher than if she sat down with the New York Times or the Washington Post, honestly, because, again, Bret Baier is not Sean Hannity. He's not Laura Ingraham, right? He is their sort of political anchor. I like him. I think he's quite fair. So she's going to face some real questions, but I think that it's a smart selection of who's doing the interview on their part, and I think she will get tons of points just for showing up.
She sat for a tough interview with 60 Minutes. And if you're the Harris campaign, if you're Kamala Harris yourself, you can think of what tough questions Bret Baier could ask. He's going to ask, I'm assuming, about the economy, about immigration, about inflation, about separating herself from Biden. So don't you think she has a good opportunity to really prepare for these and take her 60 Minutes interview as like a trial run to this?
Absolutely. And I've written about this recently in my Substack newsletter, is that I think this is the perfect time for Kamala Harris to say, you know what? I was Joe Biden's vice president. I'm proud of that. I tried to give him good counsel, but pick an issue, but I would say, Brittany, immigration. I don't think what we did worked well enough. And here's what I'm going to do. And who knows what that is, but maybe it's, I pledge to you, Bret Baier, I'm going to name a Republican as my Department of Homeland Security Secretary to oversee the border, to make sure we find a bipartisan way to solve this problem. To my mind, that's a no-brainer. She has to find ways to separate from Biden. Biden is not popular, 40% approval at best. His handling of the economy and immigration, excuse me, two of the biggest issues in the election. A majority of people disapprove of how he's handled those things. She would be smart politically to say, I don't agree with everything Joe Biden does. I was proud to be his vice president, but on this issue, I'm going to take a different course. And why not do it on the biggest audience of conservatives that she's going to have between now and the election?
That's a really smart strategy. Do you think she risks potentially turning off Democrats by saying, hey, this is how I'm going to be different? Because she is running as that change maker, but on The View, she fumbled that answer a little bit when she said, hey, nothing comes to mind when I would want to do anything different. She saved herself a bit later saying, I would appoint a Republican, but that didn't seem to do it much because it was already cut as a Trump ad.
Yeah, that was a big mistake. You should not say, I wouldn't do anything different from a president who is unpopular. That's a bad idea. To the question of would she lose a bunch of people by seeming to move to the middle? I don't think so, because again, first of all, I always remind people of this. The reason Joe Biden's not the nominee anymore is because the Democratic base was never excited about Joe Biden. So I'm not sure there's a huge number of people in the Democratic base who are going to say, oh, you're criticizing Joe Biden? I can't possibly vote for you. That's point one. Point two, Donald Trump is the Republican nominee. So given that, if you're a Democratic base voter, we're not talking about an undecided voter, we're not talking about someone who leans Democratic, we're talking about someone who is a Democrat, who votes for Democrats all the time. Are you really going to say, well, I was going to vote for Harris, but she broke with Biden on immigration. Now I'm either going to stay home or vote for Trump? I don't. Or is there someone in the country who thinks that? Sure. Is it a statistically important and significant number? No way.
I do now want to take a hard left here a little bit and talk about some medical records, because over the summer, Donald Trump did say he would gladly make his medical records public. Harris released hers over the weekend, and she is calling out Trump to do the same. He has not yet, and as we know, this election, medical records, cognitive ability, age, mental acuity really came into play, especially over the summer when President Biden did ultimately drop out. Do you think the public cares to see Donald Trump's records? Do you think this is a make or break, an October surprise potentially?
So I think the Harris campaign released their records, as you said, and then she talked about it at an event in North Carolina. What's he hiding from, that sort of thing. That makes me think, I don't think you do anything accidentally 3 weeks before the election, a candidate. I think everything is planned and purposeful. Maybe not with Donald Trump, but certainly with Kamala Harris. And so that makes me think they must have data polling that suggests there is maybe the potential to move some people, persuade some people on the he's too old and we don't know enough about him message. I would say, generally speaking, Trump, despite the fact that he is 78, he's only 3.5 years younger than Joe Biden, he appears vibrant. He appears energetic. Poll after poll after poll showed when Biden was still in the race that overwhelming majorities of people thought Joe Biden was too old to be president, and far less people thought Donald Trump was too old to be president, despite the fact, again, they are 3.5 years apart. This is not at 78 and 59, Kamala Harris is 59 years old. So I don't know. My initial reaction would be, I don't think so. But then I think there's no way the Harris people just randomly decided to release her medical records and call on Trump to do it without some backing data or information that made them think there's at least a gettable number of people for whom that issue could be important, if not decisive.
And as we know, as we've talked about, as everyone's really been talking about, this race is a dead heat. It's anyone's race. The polls are showing them neck and neck. And I was talking to a pollster yesterday who made a really interesting point. He said that Trump has the advantage and Harris has the momentum 3 weeks out from Election Day. A, do you agree with that? And B, what position would you rather be in, the one with momentum or the one with the advantage three weeks out?
So My basic view is this is an election on the numbers that a Republican should win. You have an unpopular sitting incumbent Democratic president. You have large majority, 65, 70% of people saying the country's off on the wrong track. You have the unpopular incumbent vice president as the Democratic nominee. You have people concerned about the economy, concerned about immigration, and trusting the Republicans more than the Democrats to effectively handle those issues. You add all that stuff up, Brittany, and that should be a Republican win. The issue is Donald Trump, right? If it was my phone as the Republican nominee, it would probably win because people want to vote for the Republican, but they don't like Donald Trump personally. They may like his policies, they don't like him personally. So on the numbers, it should be a Republican win. On the where the race is right now, I think Kamala Harris's momentum has significantly slowed. I think in the upper Midwest, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, Trump is making inroads. Again, it's not 10 points. The race is close, right? He's gained a point, a half a point. But in a close race, that stuff matters. So I guess I'll answer it this way. If I had to be one of the two of them today, I think I would rather be Trump extremely narrowly because I think the electoral landscape should elect a Republican. And I think the movement in the upper Midwest and her loss of a little bit of momentum, and I think the decision to do Fox News, the decision to be more out there speaks to the fact that they feel that momentum fading and they're trying to find ways to get it back. I think I'd rather be him, but man, it's close. Ask me tomorrow and I might rather be her.
I would love to ask you every day leading up to the election, but when you think about this race, it's really flipped on its head about 18 times from the summer till now. In the summer, if we remember, Donald Trump survived that assassination attempt. President Biden had that really disastrous debate performance. There was a huge vibe shift within the Republicans. Everyone was riding high. If you were in the GOP, you thought it was Donald Trump's race to lose. Then flash forward a month when Biden dropped out of the race, the momentum was all on Harris's side. Within the next 3 weeks, now obviously we see it's razor thin. How do you, if you're each candidate, what are you doing to regain that momentum from the summer?
So I think it's hard. I think it's settled into kind of what we thought it was going to be, which is an extremely close race. Like anyone who was predicting a Kamala Harris blowout a month ago was not familiar with the way our elections work in this day and age. We are incredibly polarized, incredibly evenly split. It's going to be a close election. To me, I don't know about momentum as much as I know about figuring out what's the message. Again, keep this in mind. If the undecided vote is Republicans, like people who are Republicans but are not fans of Trump, how do you reach that group? So Trump should talk about policy, economy, immigration, inflation, because on those issues, they're with him. Harris should talk about Trump's personality as much as possible, the chaos he causes, because those are the things those Republicans don't like about Donald Trump. And I don't know who wins out there. You know, typically out of the 7 swing states, we have 2 or 3 that are really close, like 20,000 votes or less. We had that in 2020. You know, I could see 5 or 6 of them being within 50,000 votes, you know, and what's really hard, Brittany, is like if you spend your time like me doing this all the time, man, it's hard to know what changes 8,000 people's vote in Pennsylvania. Do you know what I mean? Like it could be getting an email from someone that they like who is for Kamala Harris, seeing a Trump billboard on the way to the ballot box. Like it's often not these like big picture things. It's often little narrow things that make people's mind up. And that's what's so hard when you get to the end here where the undecided is really small and the margin, the winning or losing margin is going to be really small. It's so hard to be like, this is the thing that's going to change stuff.
Trump has been running on what was your life better 4 years ago. Harris is, pointing him to be a chaos agent, someone who is a threat to democracy. Do you think that's a winnable message when people care so much about the economy?
I think she has to fight to a draw on the economy. Effectively say, look, unemployment rate is the lowest it's been in a while. Jobs were up 254,000 in September, above expectations. Other broad economic indicators are doing well, but I know inflation it's lower than it was, but it's still too high, and I'm working on that. She has to find a way to fight to a draw on that issue, and then she has to make abortion more prominent than immigration. She has to make people have their mind on women's rights and women's health more than the situation at the southern border. That's how she wins. If we are talking mostly about the economy and immigration over these final 21 days, Donald Trump will win.
And maybe she will make that argument tomorrow night on Fox News, where there are those voters that don't watch her as much as maybe someone on MSNBC. But Chris Cillizza, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it, and I hope we can talk again between now and Election Day.
I will be in this seat for the next 21 days.
Great. I'll be in this seat for the next 21 days, so that's good to know.
All right, we'll see each other then.